and welcome to the Margie and Liisa Show. I'm Margie Wiggin.
And I'm Lisa Jackson. We're so glad that you can join us tonight.
And we're really excited to have with us this evening for our first segment, CJ Dunne, who is the owner and manager of Bittersweet in Hopkinton Center. So we're going to talk a little bit about the businesses in Hopkinton and suggestions that CJ might have or some observations. Welcome, CJ.
Thanks, Margie. Yeah, lovely to be here. How are you?
Yeah.
Great. Nice
Good.
to see you.
So what do you think about the changes downtown? It looks like we're, getting more...
Yeah, I think there's definitely good changes, and I think it's great to see new businesses coming into town. I think it's very important to see growth in a town, and I welcome anybody who comes into town to do business. It's tough, it's always tough to do business. Yeah. Isn't it not just a tough town, it's tough to just be a business owner.
Absolutely.
Right.
Well, there's so many expenses and the hours you have to work and staffing and,
So really, we don't know because we haven't
Yeah.
we haven't run a retail business.
Yeah.
Have you been in retail? Is this your first venture? I'm sure it's not.
It's not my first venture. I have another operation at home in Ireland, actually.
Oh.
And so this is my second, but I always say the business owns me. I don't own the business.
that's so true.
Your every department that you have in a normal company, you are HR, you are, the accountant, you are, the chief bottle washer, I literally
Whatever
do it
doesn't
all.
get done, you
yeah,
do it,
absolutely, and I think you have to have that mentality going into business to be successful, With my business, I think it's great that the community kind of really got involved in it,
Yeah.
Now I did reach out to them and say, what do you want? And
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah,
So
well-
you did, how did you, just kind of casually, or was there...
In the transition between Hope and I interviewed 1,000 people and said, hey, what do you
Really?
want from a community
Brilliant.
cafe?
That's brilliant.
And where there was a commonality or something that they, it came up more than once, I put it down on a spreadsheet and we came up with a list of about 100 things.
Thank you,
Really?
In
CJ.
total, yeah. Well,
That's
I think
an interesting
kind of got-
concept on how to do
Yeah.
that because,
That's really
how
sweet.
you interview. I mean, I interview my volunteers all the time
Mm-hmm.
to see how I can do things better. But I'd already established it. But to start a
Yeah.
new business, I wonder how many businesses do that.
Well, I think, with hospitality, it's a very simple equation. You ask them what they want and you give it to them.
Right.
And
Oh, I love that.
I
Yeah.
think we have to do that as a town as well. I think
Yes.
the leaders of the town have to ask the people of the town what they want.
Yeah.
And I hate to see vacant buildings like the three beside me.
Yeah.
I'd love to see people move in, obviously, and stay in. And I guess that's the tough part.
Right.
And I know as a small business owner, it's very, very difficult to keep going. It's a lot of commitment. But there's also, you have to landlords and people buying the properties. There has to be some sort of regulation or some sort of agreement between them and the town. They,
course.
in my own predicament, I'm dictated to as to what I can and can't do, and it's kind of difficult.
In terms of what?
Menu choices and you
Oh,
know.
no kidding.
Yeah. So it's
Who is dictating your menu choices? The Board
well,
of Health?
I can't. No. I can't have the same ingredients that are on other places.
Oh, that okay. So it's sort
So
of
it's,
a
but-
competition
Yeah,
thing.
but it's not
Who
right
dictates
because then
that? Is
then
that-
you have somebody coming in like
Yeah.
Gotha Gorm, and they're going to go in direct competition with me, and they can put on what they want.
Right.
But
But why was CVS
kind
and Hopkinton Drug?
Yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah.
an example. So I
Yeah.
think what he's saying, that's
You know,
interesting.
so it's changing from what it was.
Yeah, well,
Originally-
I think you have to, if you're going to be a landlord and you're going to rent a premises, you have to rent it, and that's it. And you can't have
Sure.
your terms and conditions to it, or you can't,
Oh, so it's the landlord who
Yeah,
didn't
yeah.
want his tenants.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
he wouldn't have 3 pizza places, for example.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
Which
right.
is fair enough, I get
Yeah,
that, but
yeah.
my place isn't a pizza place,
No,
So
it's
kind-
not.
No, it's
So
So-
so before you,
When Hope had it,
yeah, it was coffee and
Yeah.
muffins
And
mostly.
the landlord kind of grew with me, and I said, look, it's obviously not working
Yeah.
as just a bakery. So we added breakfast and lunch, and I'm hoping to open for tapas and wine in the future.
Lovely.
that would
Yeah.
be
Thank
wonderful.
you.
So and the town has really
Yeah.
got behind that also. We
Good.
have a hearing date for September 11th, so I'm
Oh,
hoping.
lovely. I will be there.
Yeah,
I'll be
thanks,
at that.
Margie.
Definitely.
Thanks. Be nice, it'd be nice to do just
I love the
you know.
tapas idea. That's
Again,
one of my
that was
favorite ways
99
to-
on a list of 100. That was number 99.
kidding.
Yeah.
No,
You-
well-
you know, some of the women in the town were like, "Give us a place that's not full of kids, CJ. Can you I put it, and that's a fact. There's
So
very few
I have
few
to tell you
places to go.
something. When I go into Bill's Pizza,
Mm-hmm.
or when I often would ask for, just give me a paper cup
Sure.
and a straw.
Yeah, yeah.
Whatever it was, wine, whatever. Because as a
You're a
teacher in the
teacher.
schools,
Sure,
I didn't
yeah,
want the
yeah,
kids
yeah.
to
Yeah.
say, "Hey, I saw Miss Wiggin,"
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
So
That's true.
I understand why they would want to place their word kids because
Sure.
Bill's Pizza, which I love,
Yeah.
has the bar and the
Yeah, yeah.
place where all the teams come after
Sure.
they've done their practice of whatever
Right.
their
Yeah.
game. So.
And especially for someone like you,
Yeah,
that's
of course. So I see a lot of
yeah.
teachers coming into the cafe now, and when
Sure.
they see students in there, they do a 360. You
Well,
know, and
that's-
you know.
yeah.
But I think our nighttime business will be strictly 21 plus. That's what we're pushing for.
Oh,
anyway.
no kidding.
and
Yeah,
so then
yeah.
now I'm getting excited about
Yeah.
this. This is news to me.
Yeah, so we
are
went
you
for-
thinking of
we-
having a guitar player?
Yeah, well, we went for entertainment, and again,
Like
we
a
were
DJ.
supported. We got a variance on it, and
Ooh,
we were
yeah,
in front of the
nice.
board of selectmen, and we put through our plans and what we like to do. And you know, it's very like independent film night, and maybe a
Is there enough
comedy
space
night,
in
that
there?
kind of stuff.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean,
because
they-
I've been to events
It's
there. and
it's intimate. That's how I'm going
It
to sell it.
is.
You know,
I love
But it's
it.
open, so you
Yeah.
Right, it's an
I mean,
open
floor. Yeah.
I present in places like that all
Yeah,
the
yeah.
time, and you'd be amazed how many people
Yeah.
you can fit.
well, I
would
can only
you-
fit a certain amount
So
in that
where would,
bit.
right,
Yeah.
right. Where would you put the screen if?
I would drop down a projector screen, you know,
Beautiful.
as you in front of the bathrooms there's a
Oh, okay,
false
that's
wall,
where I- that's
and I
where I-
drop it down so everybody can see it. You know. But I think there's a lack of, you know, we talk about what the children don't have to do. There's very little for adults in the
Right.
town. You know, I was
Right.
spoiled for choice in Cambridge, and coming out here, I have to
lived
go
in Cambridge
outside the
for
town
years in Waterloo.
for entertainment, and you know, I think that's something that we as adults need to address for ourselves. And
Yes,
I'm
I
hoping
agree.
that I answer that in, you know, what we're trying to offer in Bittersweet. And again, like I said, it was 99 and 100 on this list that I had. You know,
I love that
I
I love
carried
that
the
you're
list
doing that.
for weeks. You know.
Thank
Yeah.
you so much.
Yeah.
So how about, is the landlord the same landlord for the other buildings that are vacant?
No.
I was just thinking
you know,
if you could give them the
Yeah.
list that you didn't, the parts you didn't take, and just say,
Oh,
here's
okay.
some advice
Yeah.
for what people in town are looking for.
I think I would tell anybody coming into town and set up business to ask the community what they want.
I love that.
You know, not just what's missing, but
Yeah.
what do you need? You know,
Bookstore.
Well, what would-
bookstore.
what
you know,
would
a
bring
barber
you
shop.
out?
you
Yeah,
know,
I mean, like,
you know,
that's-
there's many, a dog grooming parlor I think would be a great business. One of those, you know, a good florist. You know, there's
Yes.
several things that we don't have. You know,
Right.
but I'm glad to see that you know the West End of town is kind of going to be a mad traffic emporium, I think, more than anything else. It already is, but
Yes,
it's nice
yeah.
to see that they're trying to, you know,
Bring more
yeah,
downtown.
pull it in downtown.
So what do you think would complement your businesses? Because you do see a little bit of a revolving
Yeah,
door with
yeah.
the business. You know, it's been 2 or 3 pizza places.
Yeah.
Can I just interject
Yeah,
for
yeah.
1 second?
Yeah.
Yes.
If you're watching, we
Yes,
would
thank
love you to call with your ideas for what might be a great thing to have in those
Yes.
empty spaces downtown. We've got fabulous Bittersweet, which is now going to be a tapas bar at night with
We hope.
poetry
Yeah.
and music, and I'm so excited.
Yeah.
And the Gorm is transforming
Yeah,
into
it's a Muffin Man. You know,
Muffin
which are a
Man,
great outfit. You
Muffin
know,
House
yeah,
from Mendon,
yeah,
and
yeah.
then Central Pub Tavern or
That's
Tavern
right.
Pub. So please call us with your ideas. We would love to have your feedback, your thoughts, what should be in downtown, given that we have the fabulous CJ and
Oh,
Well,
that's
some
what
other
would, you
great-
get, what would get you out? You know what I mean? And
you know,
I've
I-
lived
I-
in
Where
the
would you
city
wanna
for
stop
years.
by?
Yeah.
during the day?
There's a great movie, French movie, The Chocolatier, and you
Oh.
know, a small little chocolate shop I think would always go down well in the
Yeah.
town, where they're handmade. and
Right.
There's a great one in Harvard Square.
Well, for
there, you know.
gifts. I
For
mean,
gifts,
Celia
yeah,
and I go to
yeah.
Natick Mall to Godiva
Yeah,
to
yeah.
buy gifts because
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
like a nice
You have
gift.
to eat it. Don't
But I
give it
mean,
away.
we always get one. You can buy one. So I lived in Cambridge in Watertown for how many years? Oh my God, almost 20 years.
Right.
Between those two, was it 20 years? Close.
Yeah, it was.
18 years. No, I'm
Could've been
aging
neighbours. They could've
myself.
been-
Yeah.
yeah, so am I, yeah, so am I.
But I loved Cambridge because and tapas
Yeah,
were,
yeah.
you know,
It's
like one of my favorite places. You know, when tapas started coming out.
Sure.
And there's a great tapas place in Somerville that
Sure.
I've gone to many times, and it's just, I love the idea of kind of having more of an adult thing, because when Randy and I moved out here in 2000, that was one thing we kind of missed,
Yeah,
is
definitely.
that city culture, that
Yeah.
city
Any city,
flavor.
you know, wherever you live, if you
Yeah.
can walk to different places,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
any
that- and
city
that's
has
what it
a
is.
number of
Yeah.
different restaurants,
But-
and you can choose which one,
Mm-hmm.
like your own menu of restaurants.
Yeah.
Right.
So having a tapas dinner alternative, and then a pub menu,
Yeah,
and then
a pizza
Thai
place,
food,
and then Thai.
and pizza,
Yeah, I think we have a bit of
pizza
everything.
places,
Yeah.
one Greek, one Italian.
Yeah.
You know, so think about what else should we have in there. I would love to see an Indian restaurant
Yeah,
go
it'd be
in,
great,
because
yeah.
we have so many people
Yeah,
of
yeah.
Indian culture.
Yeah.
Sure.
You know, there's pho in
Framingham.
Vietnamese,
Yeah, yeah.
which is in Framingham. That's far.
Yeah.
So yeah, it would be. What else do you think? What else was on the list of 100 things?
Well, entertainment and wine was the very last two things, you know.
Interesting.
But you know, pour over coffee, and I didn't put pour over coffee in. We have the machines now because he had
What
it
is
in,
that?
you know, quick pour coffee. Because he had it in the Gorm, and that was his business. And I thought, you know what, I don't want to come in.
Sweet.
Yeah, I just
Sweet.
didn't. You know, there's enough for everybody.
That's
Right.
very.
And
That's
I think,
respectful.
and
I love
and
that
I think
you
you
did
have
that.
to do that, you know.
Yes.
And
A good neighbor.
but now I'm going to you know put it in obviously now that he's
Yeah.
gone, and we're going to open earlier and hopefully open later, and you know.
and grab some of that business.
And grab some of that business, the early morning
It's up for
business.
grabs now.
Well, it's there at the other end of town with Duncan and
True.
Starbucks and stuff, you
Well,
know.
no, Duncan and Duncan.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
Starbucks.
yeah. And they're- yeah,
In
that's very
Massachusetts,
true.
yeah.
If you miss the first Duncan, there's
then-
always the second Duncan.
That's
Yeah, you can't miss
Massachusetts.
it. Yeah. But I think you know, like maybe a small art gallery. I think
Yeah.
we always, you know,
Oh.
we've got such art gallery, yeah. And one of the dog grooming product has come up so many times with my customers.
Oh, no
You
kidding.
know, because
Interesting.
everybody has animals and pooches, and they're obviously
So
taking
I'll
them
just ride my
elsewhere.
horse downtown.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. Yeah, or even you know, I thought maybe a small museum, like a marathon museum or
Well, they're
something.
doing
in there.
Well,
marathon
they
Yeah.
are, yeah, which is
And-
awesome.
And actually,
but
there
that's
was
not gonna.
a-
That's that build out's gonna be a while though.
yeah.
Yeah.
There was a thing that was popular. I don't know if it still is called a blow dry bar, or blowout bar, or something,
In
or dry
cities.
bar, dry
Yeah.
bar.
They
Dry
dry
bar, yeah,
their
dry
They
hair
bar.
just
straight.
don't. Yeah, they just
Yeah,
blow
well,
dry your
well,
hair.
listen, you know, you lost on me. You know,
I don't
totally
even own
lost
a
on
blow
me.
dryer.
Yeah.
My hair would be like out to here.
I hate when it's raining.
Yeah, are you
know,
sure?
so-
You
yeah.
might use it every day. You never know.
You never know. I probably
How's the
would.
humidity been for you?
Oh my gosh, so humidity and Irishmen just don't mix, you know. We're like a very bad cocktail. We really are. I'm looking forward to the fall.
Me
Fall
too.
is my time, really. You know, I love it.
So with your business, did you have to go through any zoning changes to want to open up later, or was there
yeah,
any?
yeah. And I have
Is
to
that
say,
what's coming on the 11th, or you've already?
well, I've done all that,
Oh,
yeah.
good.
And again, you know, zoning, planning, all the departments here in town, I have to say, really, were
Very supportive.
yeah,
Love
totally.
them.
You know, and I
Awesome.
think there's the opposite impressions out there that it's a very difficult town to do business in. It's not, but what they
Only if you're trying to do
Big.
business
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
causing a problem.
Yeah.
And if you
Yeah,
come in
you're an
respectfully,
asset to our
and I think you have to
Exactly.
just, you know, keep your head down and work hard, you know.
Right.
And I was very much focused on how do I make Bittersweet a part of the community, not,
Love that.
you know, nothing else. You know,
Right.
if we didn't sell a coffee from one end of the day to the end, as long as it was busy with people, that this is our
Yes.
meeting place. And I think
Yes.
we have been successful in that.
It's
And
a beautiful space.
you know, the
too.
town wrote to me and thanked me for trafficking business too, because the library had closed, the offices had closed, and they were, you know, we were the only one trafficking anybody during the day.
Downtown, yeah.
And the Board of Selectmen actually took time out to write me a letter and say, "Do you know what,
Aw,
we
that's
really
awesome."
appreciate
They-
what
they
you've done."
recognized,
Yeah, they
yes.
did, and you know, I think
Well
that's
deserved.
yeah, that's kind of you know, that's where they're at now.
Right.
There's at least one board who says, you know, this guy's knocking his pan in, and he's bringing people into the town.
Right.
We've actually trafficking now from other towns, which is great, you know.
That's amazing.
So people could. So when you say trafficking, there are multiple meanings to that word.
Yeah, we're
so
bringing
you mean
in
that traffic comes
Uber mums,
by.
Uber mums. You know, one mum will arrive in with 5 kids. You know, and I'm like, "You're the Uber driver," and she's like, "How do you know?" And I'm like, "See a lot of you here," you know.
Oh, that's so funny.
So you know, Holliston, Uxbridge, you know,
Oh,
Mendon,
wow.
surrounding towns.
And
you know?
I have to
Wow,
say
that's
that
awesome.
for me, I think part of what's happening there is the ambiance.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah,
you
I
have a
hope so.
beautiful.
It really
You
is.
work really hard to make it a beautiful space.
Sure.
You have comfortable
High quality.
seating. You
Yeah.
have different types of seating. So if
Yeah,
someone
yeah,
wants
yeah.
a couch that's there,
Yeah,
if they
yeah.
want a table that's
Yeah,
there, you have little privacy sort of.
And I
screen
think bringing
areas.
in Emus Purse, you know, Kathy's retail stuff there,
Yeah.
I think that's really helped too.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and you know, I find, you know, that's growing week on, week out, but
Yes.
people are kind of staying in the shop longer, and
Sure, there's more to look at.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, they say retail and coffee shops don't work. they do.
Yeah.
Well-
You just don't have to push it in their face. I think she does a great job of blending in with my space, and she's always very respectful of it. You
Well,
know?
and then I think the other thing, because I know of her work when it was at Waterfresh.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's still there, but it's more of an art gallery.
Yeah.
And then there's this beautiful, oh my goodness, beautiful
Yeah.
artwork. I can buy that.
And her
thing?
stuff is so good, you know.
Yes,
She's so
beautiful.
thoughtful. She represents each season, and she represents, you know, Father's Day, Mother's Day. She's got a great eye for, I guess, putting in stuff that kind of tugs at the heart, you know.
Yes.
There's a book she put in, and it's When You Love a Dog. Of course, I have a dog, Dolly. Everyone sees me around town. But, you know, I read it, and it was this written for me, you know. And I think a lot of people see the stuff that
That
she brings in,
connection.
that connection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she's a wonderful lady, and I'm really happy to have her products at Bittersweet. I'm also looking at bringing in maybe a men's range of things. I'm speaking to a guy up in P-Town who does like books, belts and buckles and
Oh,
hats.
good,
And,
good.
you know, just to be
And the,
different.
yeah.
Bespoke kind
Braided.
of designer. His stuff up there sells really well, so he's going to bring down a small amount, and we're going to try it out and see if it works.
Well,
you know?
that's an interesting
Lovely.
concept because I've been to Provincetown many times. One of my favorite places on earth because it's just so much fun and there's so
Sure.
much diversity. And but the shops are. I'm not a shopper.
Yeah, me neither.
I don't like to shop, but I have to.
I
say-
am.
Oh, are you?
Yeah.
I'm
No,
an
but
online
for me,
person.
and sorry if I'm
Yeah.
interrupting.
No,
for me,
no.
when I shop, when I went to Morocco, for example,
Yeah, you buy an item.
loved.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
I loved
The markets.
appreciating the art,
Sure,
the
yeah.
culture, the
Yeah, yeah.
creativity. So when I shop, if I go to Rockport or if I go to any Bearskin Neck or Provincetown
Right.
or Cambridge, I'm appreciating the artwork.
Sure,
And the
yeah,
and the
yeah,
care
sure,
and
yeah,
the
yeah.
craftsmanship.
Yeah, yeah.
Not the cookie
That's-
cutter. Everything comes out the same and it's popular, and then it'll be gone 2 2 months
and
later.
actually, that's what my comment was
That's-
about. Is
yes.
that's the type of shopping I would do
Right.
because
Yeah,
when I
sure.
travel,
Quality.
Yeah, yeah.
and when I go to a different town or city or whatever,
You want to
you want to see a shop that kind of represents the area.
Yeah, it's local. Yeah,
Yeah, and I mean, you want to support the local artists
Yeah, for
because
sure.
you've taken care to make this place,
Special.
special. And if you bring in other people that feel the same way, there's something about that warmth.
I hope
and
so
people that
anyway.
feel-
I
and
hope
they-
so,
and-
you know. I hope so. I can get really tired sometimes. So,
I'm
you know, I
sure.
was described recently as brisk, and I was like, well, I was totally offended. And it wouldn't be that I'm brisk.
No.
It's so busy. I don't
Of course,
have
you
the
got
time
busy.
to.
Yeah.
You know, you
People
don't
can-
have time
well,
always to.
I think we're all
to
guilty
chat.
of that. If
Yeah,
it's something
I'm
busy and we
queen
can't
of
think and we
briskness.
can't pay
Yeah,
attention,
yeah, absolutely,
and I got to
yeah,
get to the
yeah,
next
yeah,
thing.
yeah, yeah.
But the other thing I wanted to say is, again, in terms of non-compete, Hopkinton Drug has some handcrafted items,
Sure.
some
Yeah,
earrings,
yeah,
some
yeah, yeah.
bracelets, some
Yeah.
rings.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you have to check with them to not have the same vendor, or
no.
can you have the same item?
No,
But
it wouldn't
it's a
even cross.
different
It wouldn't even cross my
landlord.
mind to. Yeah, totally different.
Different landlord,
Yeah,
and that's
different
the concern.
landlord, different
oh,
area,
good.
and
Wonderful.
you
And
know,
It's a
Swoon?
different demographic of who
Yeah,
comes in
Swoon
there.
also
really
has-
all of the stuff that we retail out goes to women's charities. It's not for profit. It's
not for-
totally
Yeah, that's
for
what Alina's person.
Yeah, it's all made by women
I
for
love that.
women, and I
That's
think
why I
that's
love to
that's
purchase.
what that's really what got me involved when I
Absolutely.
saw what Kathy was doing, where she was sending the funds for. I was like, gosh, you're wonderful.
That's wonderful.
How can I not help? You know,
Right.
and I just think it complements our shop really well.
I
you
wonder
know?
if he did a showcase artist,
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, that's another thing that would be kind of
Yeah, well, we do
interesting.
artists on the month, you know.
Like
every
Oh, you
month.
do?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
so
awesome.
every month the left wall changes, and they're all local artists. We
love
have
that.
this is our 12th artist up.
Aw,
So the wall
for
will come
you.
down on Friday, and a new one will go up on Sunday, and then we do a meet the artist night. And then Cheryl's coming back, I think, to do the intimate artist storytelling in the fall,
Cheryl
and
Crow.
that was a huge success. You know,
Absolutely.
and I think it's wonderful to see the place packed with people telling stories.
Right.
You know, so Cheryl and I are going to work that out this week. You know,
And I like the idea of the over 21 sorry kids, but I mean
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's
sorry
that's
kids.
Well,
yeah.
we need a place.
But
Yeah.
That's
some,
not a
there's some
playground.
places I take my daughter and some places I don't. You know
Yeah,
what
yeah,
I mean?
yeah,
You
yeah.
don't see me going to
Sure.
the bar at Bill's, but
Yeah.
we'll have pizza on the other side. But there's certain things
Yeah.
you do with your kids and certain things you do as an
Yeah,
adult. I mean, and
absolutely.
that's
And I think the new bar coming downtown, central, I think that will offer,
Yeah.
an alternative to that as well. I mean,
course.
Bill's can be
And-
like
and
a zoo sometimes.
Yeah.
I work there, and sometimes it's too loud for me. Sometimes.
Right, right.
True, that is very live
Yeah,
space.
yeah.
So I know we're almost out of time, but just real quick, what would be your biggest challenge of running a business downtown? Just for
I
other
think
business
it's the
owners?
same with
Sorry, I know
everybody,
we're
time
over.
and time again. And I've talked to the boys in Central Kitchen, and that is our Central Tap Room.
Oh, good.
Staffing.
Yes.
Oh, no
Yeah,
kidding.
and I told them it took me 18 months to find that crew that just settled in. And I think that's what will delay them, actually, you know.
Is staffing.
Staffing, yeah.
No kidding.
So what I heard, and I don't think I think it's okay if I say this, David Phillips of the Quorum is
he's
going
gone
to be
across
the
there.
manager.
Yeah.
So he is the one looking for the staff. And so part of what's good about that is the people who
He
love
knows
seeing
them.
him over at the
Yeah, I
Quorum
think that-
and all of those high school students who came in and out, or the moms who are stay-at-home moms, maybe his pool of applicants that he can then transfer over there.
I hope so. I spoke to the owners there recently, and I said what I did was go to FSU and the larger local
Framingham
church
State.
groups, and you know, you have to think outside the box, though. You really do, because it's not there, you know. And I told them you could try 10 people and get one. You know, I went for a group of interviews up at Johnson and Wales, and 2 people showed up out of a dozen, and both of them didn't really have a command of English.
Oh,
so you know, you're kind of, you know,
That's
it
not
is
gonna
tough.
work.
You know, it is tough. You know. But
Can I ask?
Here we are.
Tell us a little bit about your place in Dublin. Is it Dublin?
So
I'm
it's
assuming
actually,
Dublin, but
no,
it's Ireland.
it's in a small village called Dunne. It's very similar to the size of Hopkinton.
Oh, nice.
And I left here 10 years ago, went home and decided I'd open it. And then the day I actually opened, our Taoiseach stood up and said we were heading into the worst economic crash. All of us were, you know, it was that big crash. And
2008, sure.
yeah,
We crashed here too.
Yeah.
2000
And I was
crash.
lucky. I had a visa to work in the US, and I was offered a job back here in the US. And I said, so I made it a co-op. Actually, I had 3 women,
Brilliant.
and
That's
I gave them
awesome.
10% each, and they put their kids through college. They're still there, you know, local women.
Wow. But
And-
that's another innovative way on how someone could manage a business, because many business propositions have come across my in my 50 year. You know, people come up with ideas, and they're like, I like to cook, so like, you want to open a restaurant, I like to make drinks.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure.
But I mean, the idea is on what you did is to build that foundation. I think
Make them take ownership.
Yeah,
You know, I gave them
yeah.
a piece of the pie and
That
said, hey, I
co-op
won't be
idea
here.
is such a great idea.
Here's 10% each. Go get them. Whatever the return is, you'll each get 10%.
But then you balance the workload.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that makes it more. I mean, restaurant is so arduous.
Yeah,
I mean,
really
just I mean, you're up
on your
the
feet
crack
all the
of
time.
dawn and
And
up late at night.
supply purchasing.
Yeah.
So what I have to say is thank you.
Oh, thanks
you.
very much. Thanks for having me in
for
tonight.
the heart that you have
Yes.
for this community
You
and
know-
for making it a labor of love and not just a business.
Yeah,
Seriously,
well,
because
you
you're
know,
thinking
I think you
about
have
what works
to.
for the community. You're interviewing
have
people
to,
in the
yeah.
community,
Yeah.
but you didn't have to.
Well-
and that's what I'm thanking you
All right,
for
thanks, Margie.
because that's very special.
Okay,
and I
thanks
think
so
people
much.
need to know that about you.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks a
Thank
lot.
you.
Thanks for
Thank
having
you
me here
so
tonight.
much.
Yeah.
Appreciate your time.
Cheers.
and
Thank
thoughts.
you.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
And we'll be back to talk about John McCain, his legacy and life.
Great.
See you back.
Thank you.
This week on Meet Your Neighbor, Cheryl Perral sits down with naturalist Alex Brown.
Impressive and perplexing title to me, perhaps. What does that mean?
It's perplexing to me too, because I can't point at one specialization within the general field of scientific computing that sticks.
Have you ever considered texting and driving? If so, you should know the consequences. If caught texting and driving for the first time, you could get an $100 fine plus your license taken away for 60 days. The consequences only get worse the more you get caught. Even if you don't get caught, there could be serious effects. You could get into a car accident and hurt yourself or someone else. Texting and driving is a very dangerous combination, so stop before this happens to you.
This week on Highlights from the Hill, Jim Cousins, Carol Kavanaugh, and their guests talk about all the prep work needed to start off the school year.
Kind of oversaw all that, the project. So everyone else had to get out of the way. Let the team come in and trust them, and everything pretty much got it where it was supposed to go by the organization of the numbers.
Yeah.
So everyone had a sticker and a number. Once you put it on the box, it got there.
So much nicer when I was younger.
Welcome back to the Margie and Liisa Show. And we just had a great guest with us, CJ Dunne of Bittersweet, whose heart is so dedicated to the community and making it a wonderful thing here. So I really appreciated his time.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about someone else whose heart is totally dedicated to America. Sadly, John McCain passed on Friday.
Yep.
Today would have been his 82nd birthday.
Yep.
And he is lying in. Many people have been doing that. We want to give you guys a chance if you want to call in and just say some of the things you valued about John McCain or some stories. We have stories, of course.
Right.
And I have some things written down. But really, we'd love to have you join the conversation. So give us a call. The number or the email should be on the bottom of the screen.
So it was interesting. I mean, like, it was kind of fun, and I've been listening to the news, and, you know, John McCain's always been on my radar, which you can't say that about most politicians from other states. I mean, certainly within our state, we'll see people, but, you know, a lot of people come and go. But he'd served for 32 years. And it was kind of interesting, kind of his story. You know, I guess he was kind of rough and tumble, and that's where his work, you know, as he grew older, he was called a maverick because he would speak his mind and really fought for what he believed in and what he thought was best for his constituents in America.
Yeah.
But, you know, he was a Navy fighter pilot, and he was a prisoner of war for 5.5 years.
Yeah, crazy.
And it was interesting, as I was driving, they were interviewing a bunch of prisoners of war.
Were they his fellow prisoners of war?
In Vietnam.
Yeah.
Some were, and some were other prisoners of war. It wasn't just one camp. So it was interesting listening to the despair. I mean, can you imagine 5.5 years? And there were things that I didn't know about John McCain, as he was kind of the last to go. He said, take this one first, take this one first. And he was a very young man. Think of yourself when you're that young, would you be that selfless?
Yeah.
And
he was saying that when he talked about his fellow POWs, because he was very conscious of his oncoming death.
Yes.
He took time to write a book.
Yep.
He took time to write letters.
Yep.
He took time to do interviews
Yeah.
so that we would all know
What he went
how
through.
amazing he was and all of the thoughts that he had going through this process, but through his life. So he said he loved the fellow POWs and that they supported each other by tapping on the wall. Now, when that was talked about in some public arenas and by some government personnel, tapping on the wall was sort of made fun of but this was maybe a couple of years ago. So why, what's the big deal? But the fact is that was a lifeline.
Some kind of
just to know
communication.
that the other person on the other side of the wall was with you, was still alive, was a lifeline where they supported each other.
And put yourself in that position of being a prisoner of war. You're in
amazing.
God knows what kind of conditions. You're isolated. You're in a different country.
Well,
you
starving.
don't. Yeah, you don't know the language. Track of days. I mean, 5 years. I mean, really, that's thousands of days when you think of it. And I mean, I have a day where I don't do something in the house and I'm feeling kind of itchy. You know, just on the way other side of things. But I mean think of how that would be. How you would. I can't even imagine.
Yeah.
You know, it's just it's really something.
Yeah, and they had mentioned that the reason for them keeping him is because his father and grandfather were 4-star admirals.
Right.
So
And
they
thought they would
they
have some
a card
leverage.
here to play with.
Yep.
And what they didn't count on was his inner core of iron will, strength,
and beliefs, and
not going to break.
Yep.
not going to be un-American.
And his patriotism.
Amazing.
I mean, really, think
Amazing.
about, would you give it up? I mean, and you got to remember, he's a young man. Over time, you and I have had time to develop our personalities, our morals, our things like that, and what we stand by. But as a very young man, I mean, that's pretty amazing. It shows a lot about his character.
It does. And another thing that was very impressive was when he lost the 2008 election to Obama.
Yes.
He, in his concession speech, said that he wanted the people who voted for him to support Obama.
Yes.
And not
Undermine.
hold it against him, or I'm just trying to see where it is. I can't find it.
Well, and I read the same thing, that he really wanted people to just support as Americans. And I guess, we're in a pretty tumultuous time right now. And probably that was one thing that really rang true as I was researching him and learning more about him, is that he really wanted us to all do what was best. We can disagree,
Yes.
but not hate each other for it or disparage each other for it, but
Right.
have a true discussion. And that's really what democracy is. I
Right.
mean, not shutting down a certain opinion, but it's really having the discussions. That's why we have the different parties, and this is why we have the Constitution
Right.
that lays things out. And he was a true believer in
and
democracy.
Some other quotes, in his book, The Restless Wave, because the diagnosis came a couple years ago, became Reflections in Philosophy,
Yes.
not just writing about his presidential run and that kind of
Right.
history. He started to think, okay, forward, I'm going to leave a legacy of
Right.
wisdom. So
Right.
he said a couple quotes that from the book that he and Obama shared a mutual devotion for the ideals our country was founded on,
Yeah.
equal rights for all, to life, liberty, and the pursuit of justice.
Yeah.
He talked about American people, that whoever the leader is should give the American people what they deserve, to find a way to win by reaching across the aisle,
Yes. Well,
not by
many
the
of his-
divisiveness, and
Yeah.
encouraged people to serve something more important than themselves.
Right.
And then what he said also was, he encouraged voters to support Obama, whatever the differences are, because we're all American. That's the
Right.
bottom line.
Yep.
And they also said that he doesn't let petty insults affect him.
Oh.
So it brushes right off whatever the little petty things are,
Right.
because he's serving a cause greater than himself.
Right.
It's not about himself, so you can't insult him,
Right.
because it's not about him.
Right. He's a representative for us.
Yeah.
And I mean, that is so true to what our government should be. And I mean, and that's how things get done. I mean, unfortunately we're in such a bipartisan place that that's gone. It's really about who you're loyal to.
Well, I think it's temporary.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, you saw it during Obama's era as well. You know what I mean? There was definitely a lot of bipartisanship that really held up progress. And I mean, when you reach across the aisle, of course I read Facebook and I read all these political arguments, and these are people that are my friends, and we argue about something, but then they post things, and this is kind of things that I truly believe in, and they're so far on the other side. So there is some common ground there if you disagree, is what I'm saying.
Right.
I mean, you may not agree with everything, and you may see the positives in the Trump administration per se, or the Obama administration, but really, I think we all care about the same things. We care about a
bottom
happy
line,
life. We want a job.
It's
We want to have.
Constitution. It's
we
life,
wanna
liberty,
live healthy. Yeah.
pursuit of happiness,
Yeah.
and that's why there is a Constitution.
Right.
That's our common document.
Yeah.
That we all agree this is what we're abiding by. So
Right.
if we're all agreeing and abiding by this Constitution, the
Right.
rest of it should just be, how do we make this work?
Right.
Not who's winning and whose side, and all of that shouldn't be that divisiveness. Shouldn't build walls. Should
So
build
you know
bridges.
what I thought was, and I was really impressed by, one of his major accomplishments in his service to us is really to get rid of, or try to make campaign contributions more visible and more so, political
That would be good.
parties under,
Transparency.
the ban of the unrestricted contributions to political parties known as soft money. So, and we're seeing that kind of being changed now a little bit, and it was interesting when he brought forward these two. So they also, in 2001, he brought forward campaign refinance system, and it was interesting. Both of these bills reform, excuse me. No, campaign finance system.
Finance reform. Okay.
Yeah, finance reform.
Yeah.
I copied and pasted it, so it just said campaign finance. But both of these bills that he brought forward, he partnered with a Democratic
Of course.
person, and that to me says a lot, because again, that's what democracy is. We sit and you and I debate all the time. You talk about it, and through that discussion, you come out with a better.
It's you come out with you get to yes.
Right. But then
instead
you see
of
both
mine
sides.
and mine, you get to yes. What
Right.
can we agree on?
Right.
How can we help the country move forward?
Right.
Right.
And I mean, why you have different sides is they'll see a different side that you and I don't see, or somebody else, and that's truly what makes a good representation of us.
Exactly. You need to have that.
Yeah.
You can't all be one, everyone
Right.
vanilla. You have to have some variety in
Right.
there. you know.
And then more
Some
voices are heard.
interesting, exactly.
I mean, more voices are heard.
Yep. The other thing that I thought was really cool, and they were talking on NPR with Stephen Dupre, I believe is his campaign guy.
Yep.
2008. So he said that
That is interesting.
that McCain could get angry.
Yep.
Because he's a very straight talker,
Yeah.
could get angry,
Yeah.
but he was your friend for life.
Right.
So it wasn't about a personal
Sure,
anger. It
sure.
was, you know, I really feel strongly about this. So he could be angry, but he wasn't angry with the person.
No, he was bringing it
angry
for
about
a-
the issue, did not hold grudges.
Right.
You know, and so he had some incredibly loyal, honest, you know, true relationships with people.
Right. Well, look at
And
who's speaking at
that's
his.
what I was going to say.
Look who's speaking at his funeral. I mean, two of his former running mates.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Or you know.
So we have Obama.
Yeah, and George Bush.
And George Bush
Yeah.
and Joe Biden is
Yeah.
apparently giving the opening address, but who is
Yeah.
So he's just, I mean, that tells me that his prime attribute is
Right.
patriot,
Right.
American,
Right.
you know.
And isn't that what we all are?
wise.
I mean, isn't that what we
Well,
all
bottom
are?
line, it should be.
Yeah. I mean, that's really what I think.
And his comments about he said, I want a funeral. I want a couple of people to stand up and say, this guy loved his country. That's
Yeah.
the quote.
Right.
That's just amazing to me.
Right.
It's just
and it was
amazing to me.
interesting when you were talking about his book when he was reflecting on his life. And most of us are so attached to our resume. You know, like
Yeah.
I love my resume and all the stuff I've done. Nobody's going to stand up at my eulogy and read through my resume. They're going to talk about the type of person
Exactly.
that I was.
How you
and,
lived your life.
Yeah, how
And he really, 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 really lived his life.
he did.
Just fully loved his ranch at Sedona.
Yeah.
I heard things about some of the injuries from Vietnam
Yeah.
that it made it hard for him to walk.
Yeah.
Made it hard for him to move his
Comb his
arms,
hair.
comb
Yeah.
his hair.
Yeah.
But looking at him, you wouldn't see that because
Right.
he didn't let that bother him.
Right. He overcame
didn't
it all.
become his injury. He
Right.
was focused on the goal, and what
Right.
that goal was doing the best he could do for America.
Well, it was interesting, and I was reading about the 2000 presidential campaign.
Yeah.
And when he was running
2008.
Yeah, 2000.
Oh, okay.
That's when his melanoma was diagnosed. So initially, so that's when they first found the skin cancer, and I think a lot of critics had said that that's part of why George Bush had won the Republican nomination at that time.
Oh.
But I mean, you think since 2000, and he had prostate issues, so he had to have prostate surgery. He had several bouts with the cancer, and ultimately it took his life. But I mean, you think about
Well, no,
that.
the glioblastoma was only found a couple years ago because there was a blood clot
No, but
that
he
they tried to get rid of, and then they found there was actually, they told him to turn the car.
Yeah, but still, I mean, that's a big thing. You hear cancer and melanoma. I had patients that died of, with melanoma that metastasized, particularly in 2000. So melanoma's easier now, but it was in 2000s. It was a little tough.
Yeah.
So, but it was interesting, how he was reflecting on his life and who he admired and who he thought were peers to him, and it was across the aisle. And I was a little discouraged listening to people saying he was a traitor, and it was interesting.
Which people?
Yeah. Well, and I'm just saying people. And then it was interesting. He moved to Arizona. He obviously was a Navy kid, so he kind of bounced around.
Yeah.
But he ended up, and he went to, they called him a carpetbagger when he was,
In the 2000 campaign?
Yeah, no, 1982 when he went for the House of Representatives.
Oh, okay.
That's when he was called a carpetbagger because they're like, well, he's not, that's an old
Where
term.
does he
We
live?
learned it in school. So, but it was interesting. So then he became an Arizona senator in 1986. And then he stayed there till 2018. And so that doesn't mean if you're from one place that you can't support the people in another place. So that's another thing that I thought was very interesting.
Well, the
is
Bushes do that.
Right.
They have some people in Maine, and they have some people in,
Right.
Texas, and they have
Right.
people.
I love
and-
Idaho. I
and
love
different
Massachusetts.
places.
Yeah. So,
Yep.
but I thought that was another thing. I think people draw lines, and that kind of segues.
No,
into
he's
our
an
next-
American. He's
He
from
is.
everywhere. So I have Barack Obama's letter when he to and I'm just going to read a little bit of it.
Please.
John McCain and I were members of different generations, came from completely different backgrounds, and competed at the highest level of politics, but we shared, for all our differences, I'm going to cry. a fidelity to something higher.
Yeah.
The ideals for which generations of Americans and immigrants alike have fought, marched, and sacrificed. We saw our political battles even as a privilege, something noble, an opportunity to serve as stewards of those high ideals at home and to advance them around the world. We saw this country as a place where anything is possible and citizenship as our patriotic obligation to ensure it forever remains that way. So this is Obama writing in thanks for John's life.
Service, yeah.
Few of us have been tested the way John once was or required to show the kind of courage that he did, but all of us can aspire to the courage to put the greater good above our own.
Yes. And that's
At
so,
John's best,
Yeah.
he showed us what that means, and for that we are all in his debt. Michelle and I send our most heartfelt condolences to Cindy and their family.
Yeah.
So this was 9 o'clock at night,
Yeah.
the night that he
passed away.
Immediate, kind, heartfelt
Right.
letter.
And really just stating the type of life he's lived.
Exactly.
I mean, and nothing more.
thanking
Not
him.
political,
Nope.
just stating the type of person
Human
he
being
was.
to human being, appreciating what he has done for the country and him as a person.
Yeah.
And then there was another a quote on Facebook, the final passage in Senator McCain's final book.
Please, yeah.
So
read
this
it.
is McCain's words.
Yes.
What an ingrate I would be to curse the fate that concludes the blessed life I've led. I prefer to give, I prefer to give thanks for those blessings and my love to the people who blessed me with theirs. The bell tolls for me, I knew it would. So I tried as best I could to stay a part of the main. I hope those who mourn my passing, and even those who don't, will celebrate as I celebrate a happy life lived in imperfect service to a country made of ideals whose continued service is the hope of the world. And I wish all of you great adventures, good company, and lives as lucky as mine.
What a wonderful farewell.
So gratitude.
Yeah,
He's such a
gratitude.
grateful man.
Yeah.
He's not thinking about himself. He's even with his impending death, trying to pass on, trying to give back to America.
And inspire and, What an amazing life.
So Obama is speaking.
Yeah.
And
George Bush.
Bush is speaking.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when are they doing that? Is that today? Are we missing that?
I don't think so. It's
if you guys know, please call.
I think it's Friday.
Friday, something.
Because I think it was. They said 8 days past his death, so it might be Saturday.
I don't know.
Yeah.
So he passed, I think, on Friday. Yeah.
He's lying in state in Arizona now, and
Yes.
he's going to lie in state in the U.S. Capitol next.
Okay.
Service, so at least Saturday.
Saturday.
Okay. So okay. Thank you, voice from the corner.
Yes. Thank you, voice.
It's the fabulous John Ritz is informing us of the detail. So yes, we know he's in Arizona now, lying in state in the Capitol.
Yeah.
And just a brief aside.
Yeah.
The fabulous Aretha Franklin, who is not on our itinerary for this evening, is also lying in repose in Chicago at the National Black History Museum.
Oh,
so
I didn't know that.
She is not a political figure, but a great American nonetheless, who inspired us musically and moved our hearts.
Right, and it kind of goes into our next segment, actually.
Yes.
What she pushed forward.
Yes.
But.
So she is, we thank them both for what they gave to the United States of America. And we'll be back in a couple of minutes to talk about our next thing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
For this one, I think everybody got together and worked
This
on
week
it.
on
This is
All About
actually-
Hopkinton,
This star in the center
Jim Cousins
is,
sits down with Gene Birchman and Kathleen
lot of
Dinsmore
different
to talk about the
pieces.
Marathon Quilters Guild.
So people worked on, it was all pieced on a foundation that was on a shape, so you sort of overshoot it and trim it down. So people worked on that all together and making these exterior blocks as well.
Yeah.
And then once all those pieces were done, then one person put it all together.
Are you worried about letting your child take the wheel? Maybe you should also be worried about what you're doing behind the wheel. Have you ever sent a quick text, just this once? Well, that might turn into a catastrophic accident. Monkeys see what monkeys do. If you do it, why wouldn't your child? In a child's brain, almost all things their parents do, they can do too. 78% of teen drivers surveys text and drive. 59% said their parents do it too. Stop texting and driving, because if you do it, your child will too.
This week on the Concerts in the Commons series, The series finishes up with Jumpin' Juba.
Welcome back. Sorry you had to stop listening to that great music. So we're going to talk about racism. There has been a huge amount of unrest, Charlottesville shootings, just a terrible, terrible world explosion of racism.
Well, and I have to say something,
right
and
now.
someone that works in emergency preparedness, the death toll in Puerto Rico to me really shook me a little bit today and felt racist.
Yes.
Or really, I mean, how
Why
else?
wasn't there a better response?
Yeah, I mean, they're Americans. They were in need. I mean, almost 3,000 people that they know of have died. I mean, that's double of what Katrina was.
Right.
And I mean, when you think about that, that feels racist. And then Trump said, "Oh, I think we did a good job." Just a month ago, they got all their power back. You know what I mean? And he throws it off like, you know, and I'm sorry to throw Trump under the bus because I think he is a catalyst to a lot of the racial discussions that are coming up, unfortunately, and the languages he uses. But it's really tugging at something that all of us, I think there's an innate thing to. I was reading the psychology of racism, so that's kind of what I dug into, which I thought was interesting. I started reading the history.
Yep.
And I'm like, oh, yep, history of this, and then of course I find flyers for slaves for sale. You know what I mean? In the 1700s, one slave went for $1,250, but you owned them for a lifetime, and they worked for free on your property.
Well, unfortunately, at that time, it was. People were viewed as
livestock,
right? A farm.
They called them livestock.
Yeah, livestock.
And
so
I mean,
it's sad, and it's in my opinion at that time. It seemed to be an ignorance. Some kind of cluelessness about this is a human being.
Right.
How could you not see that this is a human being, and why would there's no difference? Except an attribute of color and a location difference.
And it was interesting. So I was reading about kind of where racism comes from. So this was an interesting psychology today. I read this. A person can't have racist attitudes unless he or she believes that they are such thing as races. So I thought racism is actually a fairly new term, which I didn't know.
I disagree.
Yeah, I mean, that's what they said.
I disagree with that because that's only talking about the word.
Right. No, that's what I mean, the word, not what's going on. No, it's definitely the word racism. So it was interesting. I looked that up, but then there's physical characteristics and ethnicity that kind of show who we are. You know, you grew up in Massachusetts.
Well, it doesn't show who we are. That's the point. I mean, the bottom line point here is our identity, the surface of us doesn't say who we are inside. Right. And I saw a fabulous, you did too, on a picture on Facebook, 2 egg yolks. If you crack an egg, side
they look
by
on
side,
the same.
Right. You know, the outside
and
of the
skeletons
egg. And I think I've talked about this, but I took care of chickens this summer in my camp job, and so the Araucana brown, beautiful hen laid the bluish whitish egg. And the black and white Plymouth Rock hens,
a brown egg,
laid the brown egg.
Yeah.
You can't, it's still an egg. It doesn't matter what the color is.
Right.
And that's
so I was curious because, and this is why I jumped into the psychology part of things. And certainly there's been racism, sexism, really inequality. I mean, I think
chauvinism.
It's an inequality. A lot of it, and I was digging back far, and of course I go far into history when I was looking at this. My grandfather left Sweden because they kept him in debt. You know what I mean? And I feel a little bit
American.
A farmer. He worked for a farmer.
Was he a slave?
He wasn't a slave, but he the reason why he left is because he could farm this piece of property, but he could never come out of debt.
His possibilities were limited.
So what do you call that? I mean, when he couldn't leave the property, he ran away. so he escaped.
So he was
So
like-
is that slavery?
Yes.
And I feel like, our economy
Kind of.
is a little slavery-ish. You know what I mean? The wages that we're paying people that they can't, know this.
So I also
Yeah.
want to be careful not to minimize the black experience.
Absolutely.
Because that was a horrific.
Oh, sure.
Horrible. People were killed. People died in
Right.
ships
Right.
coming. And really, my intention isn't to talk about slavery. It's to
Right.
talk about where we are now.
Right.
And
So
now
it's
that we know
interesting.
better,
Yeah. So
hopefully.
and actually when I was looking at it, so Irish and Italians, and they had prejudice, or
And the Catholic,
down south in Mexico, Jews with World War II. But so it was interesting. I looked up. There was a YouGov economist poll that was put out, and they did a survey on interracial marriage. So this may be one way to kind of see if there's racism or whatever. But it was interesting, 17% of Americans opposed to an interracial marriage, which I thought was interesting.
When was this done?
This was done in 2018. So this was done in 2018. And then 19% of other ethnic groups, blacks, whites, and Hispanics, all opposed, but they were that 18% for blacks, 17% for
Okay,
whites.
but where this is one poll. Where was this
Yeah,
poll done?
it was through the government. It was a census service, and
So
it
part
was
of the-
YouGov.economist. It was actually done with hundreds of thousands of people.
Yeah.
So the poll was legitimate, and everything I look at is, But I thought, and they also had
How many people responded to those questions? Do we know?
20,000 people.
Okay.
So it was a 20,000 person poll, and it was done all over the country, and it was done through governmental services. So that's why it bumped onto my radar, because I look at statistics
Yeah.
for grants. So something else that came up with. So they also did a poll to look at what blacks and whites saw as a difference in how things have changed in the last
them?
20 years. So 40% of whites thought our country will eventually make the correct changes to make equality with blacks and whites. So obviously that's economic equality, educational equality.
What about female male? That's a whole nother.
Yeah,
concept.
that's a.
So this is 40% of whites?
Yeah, 40%
Okay.
of whites. But listen to the stark contrast of this. And then your country has made changes needed to give black equal rights. That was 38% for white Americans, only 8% for black Americans. And this
Of course,
was
that's what I'm trying to talk about.
Yeah, and
I don't think there's a very at this time.
Right.
I mean, and we only have about 5 minutes. So
Oh,
I'd
yeah.
like to get to what I was.
Oh,
gonna
no,
say,
go
too.
ahead, yeah. I just was
I
looking.
think that unfortunately, I'm going back to Martin Luther King Jr.,
Yeah.
who I respect as an American in the same way, making a positive change, the same way of John McCain, very
Right.
brave,
Yeah.
and American. I feel
Yeah.
like, not that I don't recognize that he's a black American,
Yeah.
and I recognize that he fought for civil rights, which mostly liberated an enslaved, people that were limited.
Yep.
But I feel like he is my
Sure.
mentor and my one of the
Advocate.
people that
Well, for women.
heroes, one of the people that I admire totally.
Right.
And just I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where not judged by the color of their skin, by the content of their character.
Right.
I'm seeing so many ads on TV now where there are mixed race couples.
Yeah.
I'm seeing
I love
a
it.
president,
Yeah,
Barack Obama, who,
Yeah. That was another
who
thing
embodied
that came up. Yeah.
the truth that all men are created equal. And he was such an
Eloquent,
figurehead
yeah.
of grace
Yeah.
and calm and intelligence and measured leadership
Yeah.
that I'm so grateful that he served our country and
Right.
that nothing happened to him.
Right.
And then some quotes of
Oh,
Martin
go ahead.
Luther
Yeah, go
King.
ahead.
A right delayed is a right denied.
Mm-hmm.
At the center of nonviolence stands the principle of love. Faith is taking the first step even when you don't see the whole staircase. I look to a day when people not judged by the color of their skin, conscious of character. Remember not the words of the enemies, but the silence of our friends. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
It is.
So every time there's something
That's
like
very profound, that
Right.
particular statement.
right, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And the other thing that's really amazing was a couple more. Hatred paralyzes life.
It does. Well, look at what's going on right now.
Love releases it. Hatred confuses life.
Yes.
Love harmonizes it.
Yes.
Hatred darkens life. Love illuminates it.
Yeah.
Returning violence for violence multiplies violence.
Yeah.
Adding deeper darkness to a night already devoid of stars. Darkness cannot drive out darkness.
Yeah.
Only light can do that.
Yeah.
Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that.
Right.
So that role model,
Huge.
Huge.
It represents
and
all of us.
And
I mean,
still
those statements represent
should be coming.
everything.
So then I looked into, how do you talk about your black child about racism?
Yeah.
How do you talk to your white parents? How do you talk to your white children?
Right.
And the thing that for me, obviously, I am white
As
and
an
I have white
educator.
children.
Yeah.
Right. But I love all.
Right.
It's not, and so this is a very interesting thing, because a lot of times I say I don't see color, I just see the person. And what they mentioned was, you do see race.
You do.
Everyone does.
That's what I found too.
When we pretend we don't see race, we invalidate and erase those experiences of bias.
Right.
So that didn't occur to me.
Yeah, that's
and
why
I'm
that came
glad
up
that
in
I
the
read that.
psychology, yeah.
And then, far from benefiting people of color, our silence serves ourselves.
Yeah.
So then they suggest you do want to talk about this.
Yeah.
So you practice, you open your mouth, you remind yourself silence only protects the comfort and the history.
Right.
You don't want to be preachy. You raise your child to be autonomous and free thinking, but you can't just expect that they'll take it from your role model.
Right.
So you got to
discuss
talk
it.
about it
Yeah.
and not just do it. You address it. If your child is noticing bad behavior between people, talk about what happened. Talk about it when it's on TV. Raise the issues. Uncover it.
Yes. Love that.
I think that's unfair. What do you think? Some people believe blah, blah, but I don't believe that. Instead, I think, what do you think? So using these phrases, being kind is so important. It seems to me that this person or that thing is not kind at all. I don't think it's right. What about you? So that's not preaching.
No.
That's starting a discussion.
It is.
People are not born racist, but they learn it very young from the influences around them.
Right.
Not to burden them or make them a target. Don't teach them values, teach them how to live those values. So and then how do you talk to your black child? And I know we have only a short time, 5 seconds? Yeah. So anyway, acknowledge what's happening and speak about it.
Yeah. And it's so important to have that discussion with your kids. And
thank you for being with us,
We'll
and
see you
we'll
next
see you
week.
back next time.
Yeah. Oh my God, that was so...
I knew, I just had more